I was thinking of the picture that Sherilyn had put up here of her father when he discusses ag policy, and it looks like me the last few months whenever we talk about carbon taxation or equalization or pipelines, and it looks like you too, Lau. Anyway, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Western Canadian Wheat Growers, the members of that organization, your executive team, and welcome everyone else to Regina and to the Western Canadian Farm Progress Show this year. This is an exciting time of year. We have so many visitors coming to this city from outside of this province, many from outside of this nation, and beyond our Canadian shores that sometimes we don't always have as much access to as we'd like, but to see the wonderful displays and conduct some business here, as I said, to do some business here in our great industry, and of course to do some socializing. That's a big part of what we do at this event as well, as we meet old friends, we make some new friends. I talked to a few people here that I haven't talked to for a number of months, and we always must remember this as you socialize at the Farm Progress Show, is what happens at the Farm Progress Show in Regina always stays at the Farm Progress Show in Regina. That's the most important rule, and it's number one rule. But ladies and gentlemen, before any of that, I just want to take a moment to say thank you. Thank you to each of you in this room, and through you to other producers in your community. I want to thank you for your willingness as an organization, as an individuals, to mix it up every now and again, to throw off the gloves and to defend market-oriented solutions in our province and in our nation, and often enter into some of the more contentious debates that are agricultural related in our nation. For many years you've been the voice of reason in this debate, and for many years you've served as a deep repository of common sense in this country, and it's lacking from time to time. As evidenced in your long list of policy objectives that were most recently put up here, but as you go through history, I think about the grain marketing freedom debate years ago and the, what is it, Canadians with beer? Is that what you said, Sherilyn? And that debate from years ago, 20 years ago or better, to the regulation of pesticides and an ongoing conversation, to biotechnology. And I was up at the Global Food Security Conference this afternoon and addressed our researchers from 24 different countries. To North American free trade, which is top of mind today. You've been on the right side of so many of these issues, and it's important to continue that advocacy. And all throughout that, you have, as producers in this province and advocates in this province, you've remained true to the principles that you have that are so important. We owe you, on behalf of the province, our deep gratitude for your persistent and determined advocacy on behalf of Saskatchewan. You have made agriculture stronger in this province, and you have made agriculture better in this province, and we appreciate that advocacy. And yet again, I never end without an ask. We need that continued advocacy on these topics that were on the screen earlier, and most notably on topics such as carbon taxation, which would have a very, very detrimental effect to our communities, to industries in our communities, and to this industry, the backbone of our economy in this province, the industry of agriculture. We need to continue to engage at every level possible, because this ineffective and damaging policy that's been put forward threatens, in many ways, the profitability of our industry of agriculture, not just in Saskatchewan, but I would put forward across the nation. Despite what Lyle's colleague, the federal agriculture minister, may say, this is a problematic policy for this industry. The good news is this, is that we are gaining some new allies in our position. Most notably last week, as everyone knows, we had an Ontario election. Premier-designate Doug Ford has already announced that his first act when he forms government would be to cancel Ontario's cap-and-trade scheme. They've also identified that it's an ineffective policy. He'll challenge the federal government's authority to impose this tax on Ontarians. We've already launched our Court of Appeal, our reference case to rule on the constitutionality of this flawed policy, this carbon taxation policy. And in our view, Ottawa, what they are trying to do, our federal government is attempting to impose this policy on some provinces, so far one province, Saskatchewan, but not others, and it's based on how we are exercising what is our own legislative jurisdiction here within our borders. Essentially what they're saying, that if they don't like your plan, they'll impose their own plan, and they'll impose a carbon tax in your jurisdiction. Well, this isn't how our Constitution in this nation works. Provinces are not, will not be subsidiaries to the federal government. And you should know that this opposition to a carbon tax in our province in no way should anyone say that that puts us forward as climate change deniers or anything of the sort. We just think that a carbon tax is an ineffective tool, And it's the wrong way to address the challenge that's before our Earth. First of all, like I said, it doesn't work. It's an ineffective policy. Ladies and gentlemen, remember this, if you remember anything tonight. No jurisdiction in the world has imposed a carbon tax and have seen a corresponding reduction in greenhouse gases because of the implementation of that tax. Australia went away from it. Ontario's going to go away from it. In Saskatchewan, we make our living by trade, which is why NAFTA is such an important deal to us. We are one of the top exporters in Canada on a per capita basis. We are also one of the top exporters in the world on a per capita basis. Each and every year, our 1,171,000 people now, we do business with over 150 countries all over the world. These are industries that are doing business with these countries and people in these countries that are driving our economy. And those include agriculture, energy, manufacturing, mining, and they're all energy intensive. They all emit greenhouse gases. In fact, nearly a quarter of our emissions in this province do come from the industry of agriculture. Now, I know the federal government has stated that all the money raised from a carbon tax will stay in Saskatchewan. We're getting into the hypothetical part of my speech because we won't have one, but they do call it a revenue-neutral carbon tax. Say that we can do whatever we want with the money. That we could lower another tax or we could provide rebates to whoever we chose. So let's just consider that very hypothetical situation for a moment. Let's say we exempt agriculture from the carbon tax. The tax would still go on the fuel that's used by our truckers. The tax would still go on the trains that transport our grain to the coast. It would still go on the natural gas used to make fertilizer that we purchase each and every year. It would still go on the chemicals that are sold to our producers in this province. How would we ever accurately determine how much we should rebate each farmer for each of those transactions? And even if we were able to do that, how would we administer such a government-sponsored shell game is essentially what this is, where the government grabs your money with one hand, it gives it back with the other. And if you go back to my original point about the effectiveness of this policy, what's the point of doing any of that? It doesn't work. In agronomy, in zero-till technology, for instance, which was mentioned earlier. But in Saskatchewan, for example, we manufacture now air drills and we export them all around the world. We don't just use them here, we export them. Companies like Bourgault, what was Flexicoil, now CNH. We have Pillar Laserworks, Seedmaster, Seedhawk, Morris. We have other zero-till support equipment from Degelman, from Brandt. But these air drills are now helping reduce emissions by sequestering carbon in soils, not just in Saskatchewan, but in places like Russia and Kazakhstan and Australia and the United States and faraway places like Manitoba and Alberta. But here at home, in our province, 90% of our land is cultivated using those very drills. It's cultivating using zero or minimum till practices. In addition, we add to that what we have done in the way of crop genetics. And I think of Al Slinkard, a professor at the College of Agriculture, a professor of mine when I attended there years ago, and his inroads into the pulse crops that have seen our acreages in this province soar over the last number of years. In 1990, there was 400,000 acres of pulse crops, 7 million acres in the province of Saskatchewan last year. We account for 84% of Canada's lentil exports, 75% of our nation's pea exports. Peas, chickpeas, lentils, we all know fix nitrogen. They offset our carbon footprint in this province by a further 2 million tons. The upshot of this is Saskatchewan's crop agricultural soils today are carbon neutral, and we're on a trajectory to be a great carbon sink. And I said earlier, a quarter of our emissions in this province come from agriculture, and it's an industry that's carbon neutral because of the changes that we have made over the last number of years. Now, we are in uncertain times as we face some trade challenges with the United States, and we see that heating up. And I said I was down there 2 weeks. I was down there when the comments about 1812 and the White House were made, and I went into my meeting the next morning, and I sat down with, I think it was Senator Lindsey Graham, and his first question was, why did you burn down our White House? I said, well, it wasn't me. And I said, you know, when 25 years ago, when we first signed the North American Free Trade Agreement, things got tense. They're tough and challenging conversations, and they escalate from time to time. And I said, we're going to be on a call this afternoon in a response to this comment about burning down the White House, and you need to understand this was the day of the last game between the Washington Capitals and the Las Vegas Golden Knights. I said, we're going to have a conversation about recalling our Canadian hockey players. We're going to start with Braden Holtby. We're going to bring him back to Saskatchewan. And then we're going to try to sign a NAFTA deal by tonight to present a united front in Canada. And I know the members of the opposition have done just that every time they leave this country. It is very important that we do have that united front. But we need to engage. If I learned anything, and I learned a lot from my time down there, we need to engage, and engage some more. This is an important deal for us. Minister Freeland has been engaging. Her trade negotiators have been engaging. We need our Prime Minister to engage, and engage heartily. This is the most important trade deal we have. The importance to this province is 85% of our imports come from that nation, the United States of America, and 55% of our exports go to that nation, the United States of America. It is most certainly an important trade agreement for us in Canada, and it should be led in an increased ambition by our Prime Minister. President Trump said from the White House, the U.S. does have a trade surplus with our nation. It most certainly is true. And under NAFTA, we have had the opportunity to establish what is a continental supply chain to the world, and it's operated well. It's operated well by design. It's operated efficiently for 2.5 decades now. We need to modernize that agreement and move forward. But for example, there's John Deere tractor factory, if any of you have a John Deere tractor at home, located in Waterloo, Iowa, and you would already know that. Some of the tractors that are made in Waterloo are sold into Saskatchewan, as we know, where they're used in the production of oats, and a portion of those Saskatchewan oats very quickly turn around when we get proper rail service. They're shipped back to Iowa, to Cedar Falls, and they're used to make Cheerios and Quaker oats and among a number of other things. What really becomes of this relationship between the Canada and U.S. is tariffs really begin to bite, in particular when we retaliate in kind, and we need to. But what becomes of that, I'm just not sure, and it needs to end. Care of business right here at home. Ladies and gentlemen, just a final item that I want to make a few comments on is a long-standing concern that the government of Saskatchewan, and now, as I have found out, many others across the nation have, and it's perhaps a burr in your saddle as well, but have with our equalization formula. Yesterday, I announced a plan that would make equalization fairer and more effective for more Canadians across the nation, and we call it the 50-50 formula. Right now, equalization is calculated using a complex formula, and it's not understood by many Canadians. And the crucial factor of the calculation is fiscal capacity, a province's ability to pay for services. According to the formula, energy-producing provinces like Alberta, Saskatchewan, Newfoundland and Labrador have a higher fiscal capacity than Quebec and some of our maritime provinces. Quebec, a province with enormous hydro revenues that are not included in this particular formula, have been the single biggest recipient by far since the inception of this program in 1957. In fact, they've received over 50% of the disbursements. During the last 11 years alone, Saskatchewan has received $0 from the federal government or from the equalization formula. A couple of years ago, our oil prices plummeted here in Alberta and Saskatchewan and Newfoundland and Labrador, and thousands of people lost their jobs. We received $0, and we continue to receive $0, and we will continue to receive $0 under the current formula. Quebec, by contrast, over these same 11 years, has received $100 billion. In equalization, that's 10% of the revenues in their provincial line item budgets, $11.7 billion just this past year. As I said, since 1957, Quebec has actually received $221 billion through the equalization formula. And this province gives us all the appearances of being a perpetual recipient under the current formula if nothing is changed. With this money, we've seen Quebec subsidize tuition and childcare while putting up roadblocks for some of our industries that might lessen the province's dependency on equalization. This month, the Quebec government banned fracking for shale gas and made it tougher to explore for oil, and advocated voicefully, and I would say quite effectively, for stopping Energy East. It's quite easy to be virtuous when the money continues to flow. Ladies and gentlemen, let me just conclude with this promise. For as long as the Saskatchewan Party has the honor to form government in this province, we'll be in your corner. Whether it's advocating for market access, whether it's investing record amounts in research, whether it's supporting value-added processing or holding our railways to account to ensure we can continue to have access to our coastline. We'll work with not only the Western Canadian wheat growers, but our agriculture industry in general. We have a great partnership. And we have a relationship that works. Even from time to time, I know we may have some differences of opinion, but more than anything, I think it's fair to say that we have a long-standing friendship. May that friendship continue for years to come. I want to thank you for listening here this evening. I want you to enjoy your evening, and I wish you all the best this week at the show.